The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, coming to you cordless, everybody. It's Friday night, March 7th, 2025. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. in Singapore, 12 noon in Sydney, Australia, and here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis, it is 8 p.m. I had to think about that. It was 8 p.m. Central Time. It'll be Central Daylight Time on Monday. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. It's episode number 205, if you're keeping score at home. Our guest tonight, Leigh Richardson. She's a psychologist. She's the founder of the Brain Performance Center in Dallas. And we're going to talk about sports gambling addiction among young men, which is becoming increasingly a problem because, my God, if you can gamble on your phone, you don't have to go to a casino. You don't have to talk to your bookie. You don't have to do anything. And, you probably will lose. I hate to say it. Now, there are a few people who are legitimately good at this, but they're very few. Very few. It's way less than 1% as far as I can tell. But anyway, we're going to be talking to her. So it's 50 degrees here again in Minneapolis today. We had snow on Tuesday night, a foot of it, and it's not only pretty much almost all gone. The place is this is the problem with spring. It's just a puddled mess. There's water everywhere. It's like, so I'm wearing my little boots because oh God, you don't even want to know. You don't. It's like, it's not good. Next week, we have Tim Conaway's coming on a Wednesday. I'm almost certainly not going to do a show on Monday night. I'm going to go see my mother. That's an all-day affair because I could drive to southern Minnesota. And, she's 100 years old. And if you've been following what's going on here, she broke her pelvis. She fell about 2-3 weeks ago, and she's healing just fine, which is amazing considering the fact she's 100. My concern and the concern of the family has been that she's going to get bored out of her mind. But so far she's dealing with it. So anyway, I'm going to go visit her. I'm going to try to go down to see her like once a week. But like I said, it's a considerable drive from here, and it's an all-day affair. So I will burn up my entire Monday doing that. And Tuesday we got nobody so far. I'm working on it. We got people coming in. This is the first time we've done. Now we didn't do Monday through Thursday this week. We did Tuesday through Friday. I mean, we usually don't do Friday shows. This is unusual. It's the first time we've done 4 shows in a row in quite a while. Actually, I was thinking about that. I mean, I told you that when after we got done with the first year, I realized we had done almost exactly 150 shows. I think it was 152, which is almost precisely 3 shows a week on average. But I had surgery in June, so that was a couple weeks right there. Stuff's going on, So anyway, but yeah, we're getting up to the bat again. That's what we're doing. Also, I talked about this last night at the end of the show. We did not run commercials last night because we've been having trouble with the audio on the commercials, and we couldn't figure out why. Well, we figured it out. So we're back to that tonight. And now I have to leave a little picture of myself on the screen during the commercial because the system we're using automatically mutes my mic, but we don't have a mic here. We have an audio mixing board. So it automatically mutes the entire mixer. And I knew it muted my mic. I knew that. I didn't know it actually muted the whole thing. So now we have to get a little picture of me on the screen. You get to watch me while the commercial's going. So the sound comes through. So there you go. So we're going to do that now. Leigh Richardson is coming up right after the break here. Stay tuned. Go to Calling News later on. See, okay. All I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. Joining us from our office in the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, Texas, Leigh Richardson, PhD. How you doing, Leigh?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And I was saying, I just realized it's been almost a year since you were on last April. So it's like, it's been a while, you know?
It has, but we've still got lots to talk about.
Oh man, we do. We do. Now the reason, well, first of all, since it's been a year, how did you get into this, and what is the Brain Performance Center? What what's your personal journey into all this stuff?
Well, my personal journey started with my son, who's a full-grown adult now, but when he was 2 in 2nd grade, he got hit by a car. And by the time he got to 5th grade, he came to me and he said, "Mom, my brain is broke." He had gotten on the internet, and this is back in the day, Jim, where the internet was not a well-known thing. And he had self-diagnosed with ADHD. So I got involved with the school counselor, and she said, "He doesn't have ADHD. Basically, he's never failed anything. He's never been a problem. He's just lazy." And I said, "Okay, I'll go with that. I don't have anything else to go with. What can I do for him?" And she said,
"Hey, Leigh, were you a psychologist already then at that time?"
No, I was working in the human behavior field.
All right.
So, and I own my own human resource consulting firm, but I knew nothing to do. So I went to the counselor, and basically she said, "There's only one thing that you can do to help him, and that is you can put him on Ritalin." And I said, "Why would I do that? You just told me there's nothing wrong with my son." And there's nothing wrong for people that choose medication as their first line of treatment. That's okay. That just was not my first line of treatment. Yeah. So I got involved and I started looking. That's how I got involved with the neurofeedback and the brain health, and I did an internship with that neurologist, and I got board certified in 2005 and worked for him until 2009. And then I started the Brain Performance Center. And that was really more of a human behavior based, and working a lot with anxiety, depression, ADHD, autism. And in 2021, the Brain Performance Institute evolved from the Brain Performance Center.
What's the difference?
Well, the Brain Performance Center is focused on working with individuals, and the Institute is focused more on working with organizations or group.
All right.
And more coaching, more training, more educating and awareness. And at the center, we actually do train the brain to wire and fire differently.
I want to get back to your son. When he told you his brain was broken, what did he or you think that was caused by the accident, or is it just what?
Well, he had no idea, because it had been 3 years.
Oh, okay.
But the more I thought about it, my first response was, well, fifth grade's a really hard year. And then I realized, and I said that to him, and he said, "You're not listening." And so, it just, after seeing the neurologist, he connected those dots for us.
Uh-huh.
And Jim, you got to know, I've been in ICU twice with brain injury. So
How did that happen? I mean, most people don't even do once. How'd you end up twice?
well, I guess I'm not very lucky, but just daily activities. When those twins were 2 years old, we were at a pig roast in Connecticut, and I was helping clear dishes using the basement, going up and down the basement stairs. And the basement wasn't finished; it was a cement floor, and I had on my cute little skirt and my high heels, and I just slipped right down, hit my head on the basement cement floor, woke up in ICU, had no idea why I was there or how I got there.
You still not remember the accident, or?
I can piece bits of it together. When I came out of ICU, they said, "You've lost your sense of smell. You'll never get it back." And when you have two 2-year-olds, you have to see and you have to hear. So I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. But experiencing the loss of smell, there's more emotional memories connected with that.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
your taste buds.
Did it
So when
did it come back?
well, now we're getting to the best part,
All right.
Jim.
Okay.
So I found this neurologist, and we were working with my son, and I was seeing some progress. And I said, do you think that we could get my sense of smell back? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, let's try it. I'm here twice a week with him, and I did get it back. And that was my pivot. That's what prompted me to pivot into brain performance.
See, that's an amazing story, and that's a tiny little detail that made all the difference in the world. And you're right. The thing with smell is that it not only affects your taste and your food, it's a memory cue. A lot of people. I mean, I have it all the time. It's like I smell things that remind me of my childhood, and all of a sudden everything comes rushing back. And I mean, that's not unusual at all for people.
And I was so happy to get that sense of smell back.
I believe it.
It was a game changer.
So, Leigh, we wanted you on today to talk about sports gambling addiction among young men. All right, here's my first question regarding this. All right, can you give us a definition of addiction, and also, especially because this is not a substance thing, So, like, I'm going to give you an example, probably a bad one. From what I understand, cocaine is not physically addictive; it's psychologically addictive, right?
Well, addiction, there's so many different theories on it, but addiction, really what happens in the brain, you do something, whether it's cocaine, it's alcohol, it's gambling, it's sex, whatever it is, you do something and you like it. You go, ooh, I really like that. So the brain will start to kick out dopamine. And dopamine is it's a feel good neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
It's connected to the reward circuit and the pleasure center in the brain. And so the brain's like, yeah, I like that. And the brain goes from, oh, I like that to, I want that. And then it goes to, I need that. And that's when addiction rolls in.
That's like the famous quote of David Letterman. He's once said, "Isn't everybody addicted to sex?" It's like, I mean, he's got a point. I mean, that's the very point of the whole thing. I mean, So I don't know. So okay, so people get a dopamine hit off of gambling because of just like you're successful at it, right? Or what happens?
Well, there's kind of two parts to that dopamine. One is they get a dopamine hit because they enjoy doing it. It's fun. And the second part of it is the anticipating what's going to happen. You're waiting. And anytime you get in that excited state, you've got other things going on too. Those adrenal glands will start kicking out that cortisol. You'll get that adrenaline rush. And it's just that gambling gives you a feeling of huge success. Because in your subconscious, you're convinced, I'm a winner. I'm going to
Yeah,
win
right.
this.
That's right.
This.
Every casino on the planet exists for that very reason. I mean, everybody thinks they're a winner when they walk in. But you brought up that's an interesting thing, because I think you could make an argument that the interest in sports in general, even not gambling, is the fact that nobody knows the outcome. I mean, it's like it's a thing. It's not like going to a play or a concert or anything. It's like if you read the book, or whatever, you kind of don't know what's going to happen. So many two teams play a game, and although you might have an idea of what you think is going to happen, nobody really knows till it does. And I've always thought that's kind of the attraction of the whole thing.
Well, and there's more to it too. When you're gambling on sports, that's my alma mater. That's where my dad and my grandfather went to school. And
Yeah.
there's that emotional connection to your values that comes into play.
Yeah. All right. I pulled a couple statistics up here that I found very alarming. And that is legal sports gambling in the United States started in 2017 when I don't know what state it was, but one single state authorized it. Now it's in 37 states, 38. All right. In that time, since 2017 to 2023, so this isn't even last year, sports gambling in the United States went from $4.9 million to $121 billion. It's fucking unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
And not only that, here's another statistic. You probably know this. Searches for gambling addiction on Google went up during that time 23%.
Absolutely. And addiction, my biggest concern for addiction is social media and cell phone use. Addiction can apply in so many different factors in our life.
Well, that's the thing. When people get likes on social media, that's the dopamine hit too, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you got to get it. You got to get those likes within, 5 minutes. It's not the same if you don't.
Yeah. I just think that's just terrible, but I'm an old fart. So what do I know? It's like, all right. So how does this affect young men? So you have young men, and they're probably, I don't know, we're talking about maybe men in their early 20s. You tell me. I don't know what their age range is here.
Well, it is the early 20s. And the kicker is, Jim, the brain's not fully developed until your mid to late 20s.
Right. That's, yeah.
The very last part of the brain to get developed is the prefrontal cortex. That's your executive center. That's where you think through decisions, where you don't react so impulsively. So when you're tapping into that age group, and their brain's not wiring and firing to resist the impulse to do it. And with the online gambling, they make it so easy. It's my understanding they'll start off giving you some money, for you to play with.
Right.
And you probably win a couple of times. And then oh my, this is so easy. This is so much fun. This is exciting. And then, our good luck always runs out at some point.
Well, casinos are designed so that you lose. I mean, it's like, I hate to bring this up, but I'm going to. My mother's 100 years old. She's still alive and kicking, and doing just fine. But she has a gambling addiction, and it's like. And I tried to explain to her once, quite a few years ago, about how exactly the casino makes money regarding the mathematical odds. And she honest to God, Leigh, this happened. She looked at me and said, "Oh, Jim, that's just a bunch of bullshit." No, I'm not going to convince her. No, it's like, it's like she's a winner. It's like, God bless her.
Absolutely.
I don't know, but like you said, every single person who walks in the casino thinks that. And then the other statistic I pulled up is all this gambling, betting, the legal stuff. 93% of it happens online, so there's no human interaction with anybody. You're literally just on your phone, which is and that, you tell me, but I've always thought that that's kind of like, for people like my mother, that's kind of worse, because they're not actually going to the casino. It's in their palm of their hand.
And they have complete control of it, and they don't have, it's no effort to do it. And the reward continues every time they interact with that. It's just so easy, because, I know I'm going to win the next time. I know I'm going to win the next time.
And then, so you got a bunch of guys who owe a bunch of money to bookies. I mean, I hate to say it, it's like an old fable. I mean, it's terrible, but it's awful.
That it is.
So
And
how do these guys get out of this?
well, the same way they get out of any other addiction. Number one, they have to change their behavior. And number two, they need, most times they'll need a little bit of help. And with gambling, maybe you don't need to detox like you might from alcohol or a drug, but you've got to have a plan in place. You can't just say, okay, I owe this guy $5,000, so I'm never going to do it again. Because what happens is you don't have the money to pay the next time you have to. And where does the brain go? Maybe I can win that money.
Yeah.
We're motivated to do it for all different kinds of reasons.
But okay, but you said the first thing is you got to change your behavior, but that's easier said than done. I mean, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. I mean, I've had people say to me, so what do you mean? I don't watch football anymore? And, no, I don't mean you don't watch football anymore. But when you watch it, you don't have access to your phone. And you put limitations around the money that you can access. If somebody gives you free money to bet with, don't you know that they're gonna come back and want something for it?
No shit. Nothing's free ever. It's like, so if somebody's advertising free money, well, there's a reason.
Absolutely. And it's to pull you in. And if you can tap into that younger age group, then my fear is it becomes a lifelong habit.
Yeah. Although that's what they want, of course, I mean, there's a whole bunch of industries in the United States that are basically based on this. I mean, first of all, you just said social media in general. I mean, you're right. It's literally people are addicted to their phones. It's terrible,
Oh, it is. And that's where they get their dopamine hit. Oh, I got 5 likes.
Yeah.
Or that's where they can, I've worked with a lot of clients that talk about their friends. I'm like, well, have you ever met this person? No, we're just friends online. We'll play a game together online, or but never met.
So I have to tell you this, Leigh. I have a friend of mine. So I'm in my late 60s, and this is a childhood friend of mine. We're the same age. His wife just passed away. So he started a few years ago. He started dating again finally, and he decided to use some of the dating sites online. And the thing that amazed him, and he's a very social person. He likes to go out, likes to go to dinner, all that sort of stuff. I mean, God bless him. He's fantastic. But the thing he found out online is that there's a lot of women that just wanted "quote unquote" online relationships. In other words, they weren't interested in actually getting together. They just wanted to converse online, and that was it. And my friend he's kind of an old fogey. He's never really been on social media, and he says this makes no sense to me.
Well, it makes no sense to me either.
Well, yeah, are we just all in the old person's club? You're not, but I don't know.
No, I'm not. You're right.
Yeah, you're right.
And neither are you unless you choose to be.
No, I don't. I don't choose that. I'm doing okay. But no, I was kind of like I'm sympathetic toward his problem. It's like I don't understand why in this day and age. Well, I understand why younger people are doing it because it's basically all they know. I mean, now we have the first generation of kids who've grown up with phones. They've grown up with social media and the internet. So I understand that. And I still think it's terrible, but I understand. But I don't understand people our age who actually just like, don't you want to go out to dinner? It's like, it's like, I don't understand it. And he doesn't either, And this gets back to the other thing. And I didn't know this, Leigh. We talked about this last year, and I was not aware of that, about my thing about the fact that people are so lonely, and well, okay, like go out to dinner. I mean, I don't know. If you're social, I suppose it's not hard, and I'm a pretty social person too. And for some people who are shy, maybe it is, but like it's not really. Am I underplaying this problem?
Well, I do think that their loneliness is a big deal. And I think that so many people feel like they're too busy. they're too tired at the end of the day. They just kind of need to melt down. They don't want to put the effort, and it is effort to, to get together and go out and do it. I don't understand it.
Well, in terms of my friend, I do understand the thing. If you're going on a quote unquote first date, there's a little pressure to actually like put your best foot forward. I understand that. But still, you're right. Well, I told you, the recent statistic I saw said that 60% of all American men say they don't have a single friend.
That's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking and it's awful. It really is. I mean, it's like, what are you going to do? Sit home and just like rot? I mean, I don't know.
Well, and our brain can be the biggest barrier to that friendship. I mean, I've had people say, I don't know how to form close friendships. I don't know. I'm around people all the time, but I don't feel connected to them. And I think that kind of starts in our head because we think we're different. We think that we're just more not like everybody else. And that can I think loneliness sometimes can be the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, and so what's underneath?
Anxiety, depression, addiction, gambling problems, lack of, and I think, really, Jim, I think what it is, it's lack of purpose. When you don't feel like you have a purpose, when you don't feel like you have a meaning in your life, you're not connected.
Leigh, doesn't that describe like 3/4 of the populace? I mean, doesn't it? It's terrible. People, especially nowadays, people seem to have a lack of purpose. And I think there's a lot of people, especially young people, who look at the world and say, well, okay, I can't do anything truly spectacularly well, and therefore why even try? Am I right on this?
Well, I saw a survey and it was on loneliness and why people were lonely. And 40% of the people that participated in the survey said they felt like they were not a part of their country. Man, you talk about no community. That's a big part of it too, but no country affiliation.
Yeah. And this gets back to, I've talked about this on the show regularly too, about the fact that one thing that's changed in the last 50 years, and people now take it for granted, is that you're talking about people being on your phone. 50 years ago, this is even in the 1970s, television was still relatively in its infancy. If you wanted almost anything, like not just food, but like entertainment, anything, you had to leave the house. You had no choice. There was nothing at home. We got 4 channels of TV. That was it. And people went out, and you look at pictures from the 1960s and 70s of major cities or even smaller cities. Where I grew up in a smaller city, there's gobs of people outside. I mean, it's like downtown. It's unbelievable. And now, especially since COVID kind of ramped up the fact we've learned to work at home. Now we don't even leave the house for work.
We don't. And we use, as you mentioned, we use technology for everything. Oh, I'm hungry. I'll just DoorDash myself.
Yeah, that's right. I know. You don't have to leave for food even. You don't have to leave the house. There's no reason. You can stay home for days and days, you know.
Can. And so many people do. And I think technology certainly has its advantages, but I think it has a lot of disadvantages because if you don't get out and engage with people, you're not going to have a quality relationship. And if you don't have a quality relationship, you're not going to participate.
Yeah. So what's the deal with marriage? All right. I've been married 35 years. It's not easy. I'll be honest. It's not easy. But the thing is, it's still well worth the trouble, you know?
Absolutely.
Do some people not think this?
I don't know that what people think. I think, there's the blended families is such a big part of the population. And that's a different dynamic. And I think that, I'm of the mindset one and done. And that's the way I raised my 2 boys. You can't get married until you're 30 at least. And then because we changed so much in our early 20s.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you better make a good choice because you marry once and you're done.
Right. Although I do have to say, Leigh, I mean, I don't have children myself, But I used to think you should put off children until you're like, as long as you could. And now I'm starting to think, well, no, there's some advantage to having kids really early because you kind of get it over with. I don't know. So you tell me, because I never had children, so I don't really know.
Well, I chose to have them a little later, but it really wasn't a conscious choice. It was just, I was having a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
And getting to travel a lot. And I just thought, well, let's just, when the time is right, the time will be right.
And the time was right.
And finally it was.
I want to get back to something you said a little early in the conversation. You said it in passing, but this kind of fascinates me about the fact that you were talking about bad judgment, how some people don't have good judgment. And this sounds like a stupid question, but what's the difference between good and bad judgment? Because I know people who I don't think have good judgment either, but I can't really figure out what the difference is.
Well, to me, where you see the difference is in their decision-making process. And and think about it. People say, well, I hear it a lot. I can't make decisions. I can't make decisions. Well, do you know not making a decision is making a decision? And not being able to think through that decision, that's using poor judgment. Or just some people feel like they have to know the answer right away, and you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does that pressure come from? Because you're absolutely right. I think that's a big problem. People think they have to know all the answers all the time.
That's because, the other thing we have going on in our society is we have a little bit of the know-it-alls. And that's because information is so easy to access. I mean, you pulled up those statistics earlier so quickly. And a lot of people think when they're given part of the information, they think, okay, I have everything that I need to consider in making that decision. And in reality, maybe they don't.
Yeah. And he also said, and I think this is really important too, about a lot of times the most important thing you can do is do nothing, but you have to do it deliberately. A lot of people do nothing just because they're lazy, I don't mean to bring politics into this, but I'm a big fan of Bill Clinton from the 90s. And Bill Clinton actually inherited Ronald Reagan's economic boom. It took 10 years to kick in. And I always said the single smartest thing this guy ever did is he did nothing. He decided to let it ride. But it was obviously a very deliberate decision on his part. Sometimes doing nothing is the best thing you can do.
Absolutely.
But people don't kind of get that. I don't know.
It's human nature. If you're asking me to make a decision, if there's a problem, I have to fix it. I have to have the answer. No, you really don't.
Yeah. All right. So you were talking about the dopamine hits and all this sort of stuff. And I'm driving around the other day and I'm thinking, and also the fact, you're saying that, that we don't have a purpose is the biggest purpose in life for people to feel good. Is that what we've decided it is? I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. I know, the second best-selling book, the Bible is the first.
Right.
It's Purpose-Driven Life.
Uh-huh.
And, maybe we should all stop and take a little check through at least look at the table of contents in that book.
Who wrote that? Is that Wayne Dwyer?
No, I think it's Rick Warren.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I've always thought, oh God, I just lost my train of thought there. Sorry. This happens. I'm old, okay. What was I going to say? All right.
Well, I do think, I think that you're absolutely right in your point that sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing at all. And that just has been ingrained in our American mindset. The hardest lesson I think I've learned, Jim, is sometimes less is more.
Oh, for sure. Less is usually more. Hardly ever is more. More is more. Hardly ever.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if that's one thought that we leave in our listeners' head, sometimes less is more.
Yeah, and tell you what, that's a good thing to end on right now. I think let's do that. Well, let's wrap this up. I appreciate it, Leigh. Now, you want to say, what was the thing you said you wanted to do a series on?
Well, just, and I was just throwing it out there, but the amount of change that's part of our
Oh,
everyday not life
right,
right now,
right.
because what's going on in our government, what's going on around the world, and why is it so hard for people to deal with that change? What's going on in the brain? And because why it's so hard for people to deal with that change is because what's going on in the brain. Talk about that. Talk about how people can break that down and accept it and make it work for them. And actually even talk about some different types of things that they can do on their own to help them deal with change.
I'll plant an idea in your head. Have you ever heard of what's called the singularity? This is mostly a term used in technology. Have you ever heard of that?
No?
A guy named Ray Kurzweil, brilliant man. He's come up with this thing about the fact that change in life, well, specifically change in technology, but change in life in general has been getting faster and faster and faster. And he says that in around 2050, there will be no plateaus anymore. It's just going to be constant. And his concern is that humans will literally not be able to keep up with this. And I think he's right. I think he has a point. I mean, to your point, we already can't keep up with it. It's going to get worse.
And I do agree with that because technology is moving. I mean, even AI, it changes. AI comes out with a better AI, an AI that can do more things.
Yeah. Do you use AI in your work at all?
I use it a little bit. Not, I use it. I'll tell you what I use it for, and that's idea generation.
Uh-huh.
Different ways to think about things.
And it gives you reasonable feedback. I mean, yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And then I'll go research it, and it just it gives me a way to brainstorm.
I have myself of the opinion that, and a lot of people don't share this, but I think there's a very good possibility that people say, "Oh, AI is going to take over the world or kill us all." No, but I do think AI has a possibility of putting massive numbers of people permanently out of work. And you're talking about a purpose-driven life. For a lot of people, even if they don't like their job, one of their purposes.
Doesn't matter if you like your job or not.
Right.
You have to have a job.
That's right. You like to have a job, So,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember this is about 20 years ago. My wife and I spent a few days in Sorrento, Italy, on the Amalfi Coast. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful place. At that time, I don't know if it's still true, but at that time, 50% of the people in that city were out of work.
Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, the whole thing had basically devolved into tourism. So there was nothing to do. If you weren't involved in tourism, there was nothing to do there, And so, the thing about technology is people always said, well, and Barack Obama used that famous example about ATMs putting bank tellers out of work. But the thing is, and I think it's called labor transference. I can't remember what the term in economics is. About the fact that you need a repairman to fix the ATMs and all those, they're different jobs in terms of the number of employment all evens out. But I think we might be reaching a point here where that doesn't happen anymore.
I hope so. I truly hope so. But I agree with that singularity, and that might be one aspect to bring in because look at change and how we're dealing with it today. And then to talk about how are we going to deal with it in the future, because there's only going to be more of it.
Right. That's right. It's only going to get, for lack of a better term, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll have you on here shortly. You and I will figure this out. And for today, thank you, Leigh. Thank you, Leigh. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Hi, all. Jim Peters again for Conch News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Conch News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this because when you check out Conch News at conch.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com, Conk News. I should turn my mic on. I want to thank Leigh Richardson for joining us there. Fascinating conversation, really interesting woman. She started the Brain Performance Center herself, and now it's evolved into the Brain Performance Institute. And like she said, one is for personal use, the Performance Center. The Institute is for companies. I forgot to tell you this before. We
Ready to connect. Click.
God, I gotta. So phone lines are open. 325 call Jim 325-225-5546. Now, I don't turn the phone lines on until part 2 starts because we pay for it by the minute. That's the reason. You can call me up. Please call me up, okay? You can also send me a text message at 408-458-5088. It's on the bottom of the screen there. It's scrolling. You can do it. I know you can. So, what do we got to talk about? I'll tell you what we got to talk about. Gene Hackman and his wife, they were found dead in their house in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They finally figured out what happened. And this is really tragic. This is what happened. His wife, died from, oh God. And I did not write this down because I thought I'd remember. It's called, it's a viral disease you get from the poop of rats. And apparently, according to the article I read, only 800 people in America have died of this in the last 20 years. But she did. She contracted this. And the thing is, at first, it's just you just feel like you got a bad cold, you got a little bit of a flu, and then very quickly it kills you. And so they figure out that she died from this very suddenly from this thing in her bathroom. Probably didn't even know what was going on. And he died a week later, because apparently he is really severely suffering from Alzheimer's, and the speculation is he might not have even known his wife was dead, and he died without any food in his stomach. But he was not. They said he was not dehydrated, so he lived a whole week in the house with her dead body, and he probably didn't even know it. The dog. Turned out the dog was in a kennel, and the dog might have starved to death or dehydrated to death because the dog could not get out. So I know it's a very, very tragic story, but at least they figured it out. It's really terrible. Stuff like that. All right. In UFO news. Now, this is important or maybe not. I don't know. You tell me. There's a movie coming out. It's going to premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival here on Saturday night. The movie's called The Age of Disclosure. Now, it's another UFO documentary. This one's different than all the previous UFO documentaries. At least that's the way it's being billed. And the difference is the movie consists of interviews with 34 current, not former even, current military and government elected officials about what they know about the UAP situation. And basically they say in the movie, these people who are, under oath, but I don't know. I got to get to this because it smells a little fishy, maybe. I don't know. But the people in the movie, and they're all well known too. I know I've went down the list. I've heard of every single one of these people, and I've read their stuff. They basically say that, the government has crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft, and we've been in a race for 80 years with other countries to reverse engineer them to develop the technology. Now, I actually, based on what I know and the people I've talked to over the last 30 years, I've always said that's true. I mean, I've been gone on this program. I've said very many times, I don't know about whether Eisenhower talked to aliens. I don't know whether there's a base in the Dulce Mountains. I don't know any of that, but I do know what I know is that some portion of the government or military somewhere in some depth somewhere has at least 6 and probably 9 or more crashed extraterrestrial spacecrafts. That's the only thing I've ever said. And of course, the thing is, if you have crashed extraterrestrial spacecrafts, that means there's extraterrestrials, right? So it proves the phenomena. Well, supposedly this movie, the guy's name, the director is Dan Fahar. And the really interesting thing is, this is the first movie he's ever directed. And people said, how did you get all these people to do this? Well, one is, he said, he told all of them the movie would be secret until it's done. And apparently it was. The movie's come out of nowhere. He did not publicize it or talk about it ahead of time or anything like that. And I think it might have helped him that he was actually not well known as a director in that sense. So that movie's coming out on Saturday. Now, simultaneous with this, that was made the news in the last week, is that Dr. Stephen Greer, who's one of the major disclosure advocates in America, and certainly a bulwark in the UFO community. He's gone on record now saying that he thinks it's not so much that he thinks Luis Elizondo, the guy who ran ATIP and who put out his book Eminent last year, which I highly recommend you read. Now, I think, to me, the book is a smoking gun. Says a smoking gun, because he says straight out in there that we have these crashed spacecraft, and there's no doubt in his mind at all. Although I have to say, I don't know if he ever said he actually saw one. Now, that's the other thing about this movie. A guy named Jay Stratton, who's been around a long time too, and I think he's a former military guy, if I'm right. Stratton says he's actually seen the spacecraft and seen the dead bodies, and he's the first person from the military to go on record actually saying that. I mean, this Jay Barber guy who was on News Nation a couple of weeks ago, even he says he picked up the spacecraft, but he never saw any bodies. And he says the closest he got was 150 feet, because that's how long his line was. And there's another thing about this too. So let me get to that too. So Greer says that Luis Elizondo is basically deliberately or intentionally spreading misinformation. In other words, he's probably a government plant. He's not the only person who said this. The problem is, and we know government plants have existed. There's a guy named Richard Doty who retired from the CIA, and his membership in the CIA has been verified independently. He retired from the CIA. He said it was his job to spread misinformation about UFOs. In other words, he was to get into the public and basically say stuff that and that wasn't true, just to get the public off the scent of what was legitimate, high security, highly classified military projects. And the fantastic way to do that is basically look, squirrels. And yeah, look, UFOs, and then no one's paying attention to your classified project. And yeah, it works, I guess, but so Greer has said that Luis Elizondo is a plant, basically. That's basically what he's saying. Just to wrap it up in one sentence. This guy who was on News Nation a couple weeks ago, Jake Barber, there's people in the UFO community who said that the problem with this story is it seems too perfect. And I've heard this about not just about him, but other people. And of course, he presented as evidence a video that somebody took. It wasn't, and I don't know if he actually said definitively it was from his helicopter, but it was of a helicopter dropping a large egg-shaped, depositing a large egg-shaped object on the ground, just exactly the kind he described. Although I have to be precise here, it's never been alleged that he shot the video, and it's never been alleged that he was driving that helicopter. But he said it was similar to what he was doing. Although there's a good possibility he maybe was, but that's never been claimed by him or anyone else. And I think that's because of security issues. But a lot of people said his story seemed a little too perfect. Now Greer has said too, and he's not the only one who said this, that I've been saying this for some time, that the government is spreading misinformation about aliens partly because they want to use it as a fundraising measure. In other words, they want to start basically a false conflict with supposedly with aliens to get the public to fork over money and taxes to fund a war, an alien war. And there's a lot of people who've said that, and I've said that too. And he said, we have to be careful with this, and we do. He's right about that. I don't know about Elizondo per se, but he's right about that. There's a function of the government, and some of the point of this misinformation is to scare the crap out of people and saying the aliens are going to eat us if we don't kill them. And Greer said that's absolutely not the case. Greer says there's no evil aliens. Now I don't know about that, because the problem here is this is not an either or situation. I mean, supposedly there's, Paul Hellyer, the guy who passed away, who was the defense minister of Canada. He said the last he heard before he died is that the U.S. military had cataloged 60 different species of extraterrestrials. Now, and from what I understand, yeah, most of them are benevolent, but some of them aren't. So, as a matter of fact, I guess from what I understand too, the Earth is basically quarantined. You know why SETI doesn't work and they can't find anything? Because, excuse me, there's no signal that gets into here. They have actually technologically sealed the planet off, and they partly supposedly done that for our own benefit. Now, like I said, supposedly, I want to reiterate what I said here 5 minutes ago. The only thing I've ever actually conclusively, definitively said is that the American government or some part of it, the military, has at least half a dozen crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. The rest of the stuff, I'm just speculating, and honest to God, I have no idea. Like, did Eisenhower meet with aliens in 1954? I don't have a clue either way. Laura Eisenhower, his granddaughter, says yes, but that was not because, she admits her grandfather didn't tell her that. She actually did some investigation on her own and came to that conclusion. But I have no idea. I don't know. All I know is the extraterrestrials are coming here. That's all I know. And that's enough, isn't it? And also this thing that Barber, this egg-shaped object they showed in the video. Now there's a problem here. And I was talking with a filmmaker friend of mine. We're working on a little project. I'm not going to announce it or talk about it yet. The problem right now is that any video, it's so easy to fake videos of anything, especially now with AI in the last 3-4 years. But it was even before that, it was too. That video now is almost useless. If Stephen Miller from the Trump administration filmed with his phone an extraterrestrial, a little gray alien walking right up to him and communicating with him, and he filmed that, you wouldn't believe it, even if it was real. You wouldn't. It was just like, no, it looks too good or something. Someone will come up with something. Video evidence now is almost worthless. There's no, you can fake it so easily. And this is the reason, conversely, this was not true 60, 70 years ago. Like what's called the McMillville photos from Millville, California, that the farmer took of this flying saucer flying over his property. He took 2 of them. And the really weird thing, and the good thing for him, is that he was standing 3 feet apart when he took them. So because of that, the pictures have been able to be triangulated and basically verify the fact that it wasn't a real object in the sky, not something hanging on a string. But in 1960, it was almost, other than a double exposure, it was almost impossible to fake a photograph. And the same thing with Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination. There's a famous picture of Oswald holding his rifle, the Carcano rifle, Italian, and a newspaper up, and we know now definitively that photo is faked. And the thing is, in 1963, as I was saying, the only two entities that could fake a photo really well to the point where you couldn't tell was basically Hollywood movie studios and the federal government, because they had the resources to do it. It was very resource intensive and it was very difficult. Now, 14-year-old kids in their parents' basement can come up with gray aliens and make them look totally real. All you have to do is like talk to Gemini and give me a picture of a gray alien and you got one. It's pretty simple. So that's the thing to that. It's like that video that Jake Barber or that Ross Coulthart showed on News Nation. Okay, maybe it may be real and it may not. It's like it doesn't really even matter. It's like it's so easy to fake it. It's like who cares? And that's my thing here too. I think that witness testimony is the only thing you can rely on, and I just can't buy the fact that I have friends who will tell me, "Well, everyone's lying." No, I don't believe it. Hundreds of thousands of people in the United States have said they've been abducted. Hundreds of thousands. Now, 95% of them may be lying or crazy. Well, but okay, let me do a little math. That means you got about 7,500 people that are telling the truth. It only takes one person, one story to be confirmed as real to prove the whole phenomena. It's the opposite of what Carl Sagan said about the fact that extraordinary proof demands extraordinary evidence. That's not true. He's wrong. So, yeah, this is going to be really interesting. This movie's coming out. A lot of people who've seen the trailers online. Matter of fact, I tell you what, I'll put a link to it on our blog tonight after the show. The trailers online on YouTube, and people are saying this might be the thing that convinces people that this phenomenon is actually real. I feel the problem here, if you want to call it a problem, is you've had a lot of filmmakers. I mean, I think James Fox, Darcy Weir, a lot of filmmakers have been chasing, who basically want to be the person who actually convinces the public that this is actually a real thing. And so far, none of these guys, I've heard people say that, well, the thing about this movie is just so well produced. But no, James Fox has produced some very, very technically very well produced movies. He did The Phenomena and The Program. And these people want to get credit for what they're doing. And it's basically been a race to see who can basically crack the whole thing open in the public's mind. Because as everyone says, it is honestly the single most important issue that's ever faced mankind before or since. So the fact that we are not alone anymore. But that's the thing. There's so much circumstantial evidence. I can tell you right now, we aren't. We aren't alone, and they're coming here. Now, I got a friend of mine that, okay, here's some logic. All right, this is, my friend says, well, no, he says, I know there's intelligent life in the universe just because of Drake's equation and just the odds and probabilities of it. He said, but I don't think they're coming here. I don't think they can get here because you can't go faster than the speed of light. Well, first of all, that's wrong. We actually know how to do that. We just can't muster the resources to do it. I mean, from what I understand, although I think NASA is going to do a test here in the next few years, that they've kind of figured out how to get this down. But to send even a little two-seater 30-foot wide spacecraft into a bubble to go faster than the speed of light would take more electricity than generated on the entire planet. So we know how to do it, but then the question is, are other people doing it? Yeah, other people are doing it. I'll call them people, and they're doing it. They are. They're coming here. So you get your mind around that. I mean, I hope that doesn't scare you. I mean, in a perfect world, this will be announced and it'll burn up the cable news for 2 days, and then we'll all get back to business. That's what should happen. I don't know if it will. I mean, I suppose a few people may jump out of buildings. There's always a question of whether how it affects religion. Although the Vatican has always been very, very, they've kind of been forward looking on this, and I think that's because they want to make certain they're ahead of the problem. They have, the chief astronomer of the Vatican has come out straight out and said, there's probably life on other planets, and that doesn't mean that Jesus didn't exist. and it didn't. And then people say, well, did Jesus save them? Seriously, are we going to talk about that? You know, I think Jesus is what you call a local phenomenon. You know, I don't know if somebody living on Zeta Reticuli, they probably had their own Jesus or something. They probably did. Who knows? So anyway, so you're not going to call me? Okay, fine. And finally, I got this too. This is hard to explain. I probably shouldn't get into this. There's a woman, a physicist, a female physicist, who said she thinks she's figured out the unified theory of physics, which is, the constant problem here is you have the theory of relativity, Einstein, which deals with space, time, and gravity, and that deals with giant bodies like planets. Then you have quantum physics, which deals with the same phenomena on a tiny, minuscule, microscopic nanoscale, right? And the thing is, those two things don't mesh up. They don't. And she thinks she might have figured it out, and it has to do with what's called entropy, which is deliberate chaos. So it'll be really interesting. I can't. It's too complicated to get into here, so I should put a link to that up too. I got a link here on Popular Mechanics about this story. It's actually pretty fascinating. Well, if you like science, you probably don't. And see, that's another thing too. I don't consider the UFO situation a scientific problem. I think people have been looking at this all wrong. People say, well, we don't have any scientific proof. It's not a scientific problem. It's a social problem. There are people coming from other planets. Now, yeah, they're more advanced than us. They've probably been around longer, all that sort of stuff. But they're still, for lack of a better term, they're still people. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and we were talking about this issue because he knows I talk about it a lot. About the thing I've always wondered is, do the little gray aliens, do they have a sense of humor? That's the thing I've always wondered. I understand that their emotional makeup might be different than ours, but humor to me is a defining characteristic of intelligence. And I've read one story. Grant Cameron wrote a book called 50 Pilots. I think it's called that. No, it's called UFO Pilots. And it's about 50 people who say that not only were they abducted, but they say at some point during their abduction, most of these people were abducted multiple times. So they actually got to know the aliens, that at some point the aliens say, do you want to try driving the spacecraft? And so they do. And now the amazing thing is none of these people know each other, but they all describe the same two methods that are used to drive the spacecraft. You either put your hand on a plate on a control panel, or you stick your fingers in kind of a cup-like device. And when you do either one of those things, the consciousness of the spacecraft connects to you. And suppose these people say you can feel it right away. And one of them just point blank asked the ETs, is the spacecraft alive? And the answer they got was, yes, but not in the same way you and I are. Which, of course, I mean, okay. Now explain that. Yes, it's alive, but it's not alive like you and I. All right. So what does that mean? I don't know. I can't tell you. But the reason I brought this story up is because one of these women who said that she was piloting the spacecraft, she said there were two little gray aliens sitting in a desk, which she kind of assumed was a navigation desk in front of her. And she said they did something, so they punked her. Basically, they deliberately made her screw up. And she said, it's the first time ever I saw them laugh. And that amused the hell out of me. And I'm really glad that happened. I guess, I don't know. It's like, yeah. And my friend said, yeah, well, you don't know that happened, Jim. She's lying. I don't know. Yeah. And the problem is, I've always used the 95% rule here. When Stanton Friedman was studying the special report number 14 from the Project Blue Book in the 1960s, they actually listed they had like 12,500 reports of UFOs, and they listed them all into various categories. There were only 5, actually I think it was 6%, that were unexplained. They could not explain what was going on. And he always said that's pretty much the rule, and that is 95% of all the sightings everybody has are either sincere misidentifications, the victim of somebody else's hoax, or just downright lying. People lie, one or the other. 95% of them. But as I said, there's so many of these instances that the 5% that are left, you're talking about thousands of reports. Thousands. So that's our show tonight. And you didn't call in again. Damn you. It's like, all right. I'm taking Monday off. I'm going to go see Mom. I know we're going to have Tim Conaway will be here on Wednesday. We don't do shows here anymore if we don't have a guest. That's basically the deal. So I'm assuming we're going to have somebody on Tuesday. Don't know who yet. Can't talk about it. I don't like to talk about that stuff until we confirm. But I'm assuming we're going to have a guest on Tuesday. And Tim Conaway is on Wednesday. He's the former editor-in-chief of Hustler magazine in the 80s and 90s. He had a brilliant career. We're going to talk mostly about the media. Oh, man, stuff's going on. Oh, the legacy. I mean, I've talked about this before on the previous this week. The legacy media in the United States is really falling apart. It's like, although it's good news, I suppose, if you like MSNBC. It turns out that since the inauguration in the last 4 or 5 weeks, their ratings have picked back up. So I actually thought that was a good sign, even though I don't personally watch that channel. Jeff Meyer does. He was talking about it. He loved Morning Joe because he says it's so wacky, and it is. Anyway, so yeah, Tim Conaway's coming on Wednesday, and we'll talk about the media with him. And yeah, we got it going on. So I want to thank you folks for watching very much. The show happens because of you. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. You guys have a nice weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday, I guess. Okay? Take care.